785-2011. That's 707-785-2011.
Good morning and welcome to KGUA's Peggy's Place. I'm Leigh Anne Lindsey, your host today, and we have a great guest lined up to join us this morning after we make some local announcements. That's Marjorie Dowell, horse trainer, horse rescuer, and we're going to continue the Rescue Me series. And today's episode is going to be called Cloudy Skies. And we do have cloudy skies outside right now here in Walla, California. On the Northern California coast, it has been cold. It has been snowing up on the ridge. Trees have come down. Just be aware that there are a couple of road closures at the top of Iverson on 10 Mile, a bunch of trees down up there that they are clearing. Also, note that Skaggs Springs Road is closed right now. So just make sure you check in with the California Road Report, find out what is happening locally, and also your fire departments know as well. I'm Leigh Anne Lindsey again, as I mentioned, and we are going to talk about a couple of events, and then we'll get into our show. And today, let's see, the Gualala Arts continues with Radio Gals, and that's 7 o'clock tonight at Gualala Arts Center here in Gualala. For more information, go to gualalaarts.org or call 884-1138 in the 707 area code. And tomorrow, Saturday, it is Goodbye Clothes Up in Point Arena at 245 Main Street, 9:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Clothing, home goods, shoes, and more. Also up in Point Arena at the Arena Theater, National Theater Live, The Seagull. Amelia Clark, Game of Thrones, makes her West End debut in this 21st century retelling of Anton Chekhov's tale of love and loneliness. 1 o'clock doors open, and actually it's at 1 o'clock, doors open at 12:30 p.m. Then also there is an author talk with Carol Wilder, and it is in Point Arena. It's at the Coast Community Library. And author Carol Wilder will be reading from her book, Living Northern California, 1975 to 1995. And she'll be signing copies. That's from 3 to 4:30 p.m. tomorrow, Saturday, February the 25th. Then that evening, Radio Gals continues at Gualala Arts Center, and that will be again at 7 o'clock. On Sunday, it will be at 2 o'clock. This is their final weekend, so make sure you get out and see that wonderful theatrical performance. We have so many talented actors in this particular area. Our remote Redwood Coast, it's very amazing that we have the talent that we do. And then I'll just tell you a couple of things next weekend. The author talk with Carol Wilder will continue March the 4th at Four-Eyed Frog Books. And copies of her books are available for purchase there. That's right here in the Cypress Village, where our studios are located in Gualala. And that starts at 1 p.m. There's an opening reception for an exhibit featuring new paintings by artist Suzanne Dunn next weekend. And that reception goes from 2 to 4, and it runs March 4th through April 2nd. That's at the Dolphin Gallery coming up next weekend. And I do know at the Gualala Arts, the multi-artists event with Leigh Anne and others continues this weekend. Make sure to stop by and see that. And then they have the Coast Art Collective up in Point Arena that has some great exhibits going up there too. And that is going to do it right now for our events and the update on the roads. Again, they are closed at a couple of places due to some of the snow we've gotten on the higher ridges, some of the rain that's come down, trees that have come down too. And that's at Skaggs Springs Road to our south, and then to our north, Iverson Road at the top of 10 Mile. And I am Leigh Anne Lindsey. I am a producer of film and voice. I'm working on a documentary called Seabiscuit's Legacy, a story of courage, hope, and healing. You can find out more about that online. We are still in our fundraising period. We've made some great headway, and we hope to begin filming some of the segments that we need to soon. And I have created a podcast that I'm building through these radio shows. Thanks to Peggy Berryhill and Susan Rushmeyer for allowing me to come on the morning show and do this. Thank you very much. It's going to be distributed later this year, possibly beginning of summertime, maybe before. We'll see. It's going to take some editing to do. But I want to let you know that today's show is continuing on in the Rescue Me series. And this segment is again called Cloudy Skies. It's about two Andalusian brothers, Cloud and Sky, whose path leads them to a kill pen in Texas. And a year apart from each other, they end up at the same kill pen. And then what Marjorie Dowell, who's joining us now via Zoom and on YouTube, is going to talk to us about is how they were both rescued at different times and reunited in a different state. So it has some heart-wrenching parts, but it also has a very happy ending. And last week we did a show called Baron's Journey, which was about the late in life rescue of a white Arabian stallion she had, who through a difficult turn of events in her life ended up needing to go to another home, and he was placed in a wonderful ranch, but then they retired. And so the saga continued about the neglect he ended up getting into along that path, and how Marjorie rescues him when she discovers that. So Marjorie, I want to thank you and welcome you back to KGUA. Good morning, good afternoon, maybe.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And I'm going to get your mic turned up a little bit. And so what time is it there in Tennessee?
It is a little after 11 here, and it's a beautiful day. It's a little bit rainy, but we had a couple really unusually warm days, opposite of what you guys are going through. And now it's back to, I think, more normal weather for this time of year here.
And just so our audience knows too, I first met Marjorie when I was looking for a horse a couple of years back, 2.5 years back now. And she was living in Gilroy at the time on a really nice ranch there that they ended up selling and then temporarily relocating over to Livermore, which is part of Baron's journey and how he ends up there, right?
Yes. So that horse, I have dragged him all over the half of the country with me his life. And he's quite incredible, his spirit. And I might add, his demise or his lack of condition happened fairly quick. Like, he looked good just 4 months before we got him back. But then, because he didn't have, like many senior horses, I always tell people being old is not a disease. So a senior animal that is in poor condition, that is thin, but isn't sick, well, we need to look at teeth, we need to look at parasites, we need to look at why that might be. That horse is fat and he is not lame. He runs around. He's got great energy and spirit. He has not changed since he was a baby to this day. He still is who he always was. He just wasn't getting the right type of feed that he needed because of his dental issues. And once that was rectified, he was fine. And so that happens often. And so a lot of people want to land-based people who have thin or poor older animals. And, it can be easy to be emotional about it. And it is very upsetting. But often we try to first educate people, and say, listen, have you checked their teeth? Have you dewormed this horse lately? How often are you doing the teeth? Often people don't know that's something that needs to be done. So that's I think one point I'd like to make about caring for older animals that are in poor condition, or when you see a horse in a pasture that you're driving by, and maybe this person just doesn't know. And it could be economic reasons too, because feeding a horse senior feed is much more costly than just feeding them hay, of course. So.
And tell us where you're living now and how you got there.
So right now I'm on a beautiful little farm that we purchased in Pleasant Shade, Tennessee, which is about an hour northeast of Nashville. And we love it here. It's just great horse country, wonderful people, beautiful scenery. The weather's been pretty reasonable. We feel very blessed.
And Aaron is now about, what, 32, was it, you said?
He is 32 years old. Yes, he is. And he's going strong.
And we've shared some of your videos too. I shared them on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll be resharing them again. And when this podcast gets reproduced, we'll make sure to incorporate those videos. We wanted to share them on video and through Zoom and YouTube, but there's also a certain technical discrepancy that cuts out some of the audio. So we're going to put those in later, but I can share a couple of pictures of today's about today's segment of both cloud and sky, and I'll do that in just a moment. I do want to again say that this is Marjorie Dowell. She's a horse rescuer, horse trainer, now living in Tennessee, an hour north of Nashville. Is it north of Nashville?
It's northeast.
Northeast. Yeah. And you also are connected to a horse rescue organization. Tell us a little bit about that. And then, audience, we're going to get into a little bit of an overview of what kill pens are about and the controversy over these kill pens that a lot of horses end up in. So first, let's address the first part, the rescue organization that you're with.
Well, I'm no longer with them, but I was with, at the time I was a board member of the Iberian Horse Rescue out of Central Washington, or Eastern Washington State. And they had organized because they had noticed that there was a lot of Andalusian crosses and purebred Andalusians arriving on the scene at the kill pens because, there's a lot of horses that were bred. There's the Hispanic, the Mexican dancing horse culture. And so a lot of these horses were from their breeding programs and being culled, either brood mares that weren't producing or just people that fell on hard times, needed a quick buck. They were moving on. So they would sell the horse to the kill buyer because he buys all classes of horses for cash. And you can drive up and unload the horse and he'll pay you for it. Not much, but it's a few $100s in your hand, and the horse is then put in a pen and fed free choice alfalfa and corn until they are sorted. And there's two businesses that most of these kill buyers have. And one of them is direct shipping to slaughter, either in Canada or Mexico, because there are no current abattoirs open and working in the United States. And in California, there are not even any kill pens. They just don't have them there. And then the secondary business, which is how we ended up with Cloud and Sky, was that they will post certain horses online for sale, either on Facebook or YouTube or various other social media platforms. And usually, in this case, a volunteer from Western Washington, a gal with just a heart of gold, would go over there once or twice a week. And a kill pen's a hard place to go to. It's filthy. There's a lot of disease, and there's a lot of stressed horses. There's a lot of horses in sad shape, neglected hooves, lame, thin. Strangles is a problem. These kill pens don't have. It's not a stable. It's a temporary holding pen. So most of those horses do not stay there past 90 days, if even that long. Most of them are only there a week or two before
And
they're.
where are most of these kill pens located here in the United States?
So this particular one was in Sunnyside, Washington. There's several in Washington State. I don't know if there's any in Tennessee. I haven't gotten into that here yet. But they're kind of spread out. There's a lot of them in Texas.
That's where I first actually discovered this entire thing about kill pens that I really was not that aware of. When I was searching for a horse online, I did see some of those posts on Facebook, and I wanted to find out more about that. How could I rescue a horse from one of these kill pens? And I ended up actually working with Ariana Strazzi Mizuki, who worked with the filmmaker Ashley Avis, who created the Disney Plus movie Black Beauty, the reboot of that movie. She's just released this year. That's another movie about horse rescue and the plight of horses. And it's the Western United States Mustang. And that's called Wild Beauty. And that is also the name of her rescue organization, Wild Beauty. And the documentary is called Mustang Spirit of the West is the subtitle. It has been going around to all of the film festivals and receiving lots of good accolades. But I got involved with rescuing eventually 3 horses, one of which was pregnant. So really 4 horses that I was involved with, those 2 women and several other women from the Santa Rosa, Sebastopol area. And it's a great story. It had a great outcome too. But it was my first introduction to this drama that unfolds here in this country still. And there are it's a controversy. There are people who feel that it's necessary and others who feel that it's got to be better regulated or done away with altogether. So I wanted you to address that.
So, yeah, when I first rescued my first horse from a kill pen, and then that led to being involved with the Iberian Horse Rescue, I was not prepared for the vitriol that was slung at me after the initial congratulations and the people who wanted to be helpful. There was these other people who were like, oh, you've just enabled that kill buyer to go buy more horses to slaughter, and you're just propagating this horrible cycle, the slaughterhouse cycle. And I will respectfully disagree with that. I understand that point of view. However, the kill buyer who claims, ironically, to love horses and hates seeing them starve, he has a whole bunch of horses that he buys direct from people's backyards or from loose horses in the auction, and they will never be given a chance. They are directly shipped he ships everything to Mexico for slaughter. They are shipped to Texas. There's a huge hub there. And once that horse is on the truck to Texas, you will not get it off. You will not. It's done. Then he has other horses that he deems are worth rehoming, that could potentially be a rideable horse or be worth rescuing. How he makes that determination, I am not entirely certain.
That was my next question, as a matter of fact.
Some of them, well, they have to be sound. They have to be reasonably good looking, and they have to demonstrate some sort of character that makes them reasonable to handle. If he thinks a horse is dangerous or just not trained in any way, it's a direct ship. So
it's his personal decision based on his own expertise and experience. It's not a regulated situation.
Absolutely right. So these people, and they will sell the horse, of course, online for much more than the slaughterhouse is going to give them. And in fact, he's now, or last I knew, was having his horses ridden because, like the fellow down at Bowie kill pen, he rides these horses for a minute or two. He just hops on anything with halter and a lead rope bareback and rides it up and down the alleyway to show, hey, you can get on this horse, it won't kill you. And that, of course, increases a horse's chances dramatically if it looks like it's a horse you can do something with. There's a big stigma of horses that end up in the kill pen. Must be there for a reason, must be no good, must be sick or lame or crazy or dangerous. And often horses end up there through no fault of their own. My first mare, Marjorie, ended up there because her owner was elderly. He had too many horses. He didn't have enough money. He needed to, and he was sick. And so he just sold them all of them, all 5 of his horses to
That's all it was.
just take them all. And none of them were trained, to be clear, barely halter broke. So we started that mare under saddle. She went on to a successful Western dressage career. She's a gorgeous mare. Her filly also went on to be a really nice saddle horse. Someone I knew in Southern Oregon rescued her. So it, like all horses, what they're worth really depends on who's looking at them and what that person knows. And what a horse is worth is so subjective, right? No horse, if you don't keep tuning and training and develop a relationship and continue to work on that relationship with a horse, a horse can go from being a wonderful tuned up horse to a Brumby pretty quickly if fed up and kept in a stall and ignored. Horses are not machines. They have a mind of their own, and that needs to be factored in. So
as a personality too. Well, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Marjorie Dowell, horse trainer, horse teacher, and horse rescuer in Tennessee, who formerly was from the San Francisco Bay Area. And that's when I met her back when I was searching for a horse and had stumbled across this issue with kill pens. And I thought it was an important topic to bring to light a little bit more. I know that Ashley Avis is going to be doing it as well, a filmmaker who did the Black Beauty Disney Plus movie and a new documentary that's out called Wild Beauty, Mustang Spirit of the West. She's working on something, I'm sure, down the road. She was involved with a rescue that I was involved in. And I'm working on a documentary too. My name is Leigh Anne Lindsey, and I'm doing a documentary called Seabiscuit's Legacy, a story of courage, hope, and healing. And it's showcasing the fabulous healing qualities of equine therapy at the home of Seabiscuit, Ridgewood Ranch, right here in Mendocino County. And of course, it's going to reflect on that extra care that was given Seabiscuit back in the day when he was overworked and overraced and not treated in the way that gave him those winning qualities, which was that transformative power that happened when natural horsemanship trainer Tom Smith came along. So it's in the way that these horses are cared for, how they're approached, the attention that you give them, and the way that you connect with them, and then ask of them the things that you would like for them to do. So in this whole process of talking about horses, talking about different aspects of horsemanship and training, this I thought was an important topic to bring to light, especially because Marjorie here has ended up having the opportunity in her wide repertoire of things that she does help some of these horses. And today we are going to talk about these two horses, Cloud and Sky, Andalusian brothers, twin Andalusian brothers. And we're going to find out their plight and how they were rescued and where they are today. But before we get into that story, and we're almost right at that point of doing that and showing a couple of pictures to our YouTube watchers, and you can watch us on KGUA's channel on YouTube, and you can listen to us, of course, online at 88 or at kgua.org and on air at 88.3 FM, trying to give our audiences a whole overview here and where they can catch the show. But Marjorie, just one more thing about the kill pins. And it seems like this is something that, you know, it exists because there's a need and demand for it, yet there's no regulation of it. And you've been involved in it much more than I have. And we're just getting your insight, and then how you came across Cloud and Sky.
So what happened was that we saw Cloud first. One of our members, Barb, who was on the board as well, she saw him, and what we would do was try to focus on just pulling the Iberian type horses. Either we would just share them until we could get someone to adopt one and pull that horse and get it into quarantine and get that horse safe. Or if it didn't look like that was going to happen, we would raise funds, often deeping into our own pockets, and get those horses out into quarantine, and then adopt them from that point on, after we had them 6 months to a year of feeding them, evaluating, training, etc. If we could get them adopted sooner, great. But if not, we would, keep them as long as it took to get it done.
Now, was this the Iberian Horse Rescue organization?
Yes.
And how did you come across them?
Because of adopting Marjorie, and then they reached out to me actually and asked me if I wanted to be involved. And so I said, of course. And I jumped on board and started helping them.
Okay.
So Cloud clearly looked like, none of these horses have any history. The kill buyer told us he arrived in a dilapidated 2-horse trailer, was unloaded by a Hispanic man who hopped on him bareback and rode him to the pen where he wanted him, bareback in a halter, and that the horse was mellow and seemed pretty well mannered, and that the horse just didn't dance, and that's why he didn't want him.
The horse just didn't dance.
Right. So, and the horse has a big hip brand, 57 Ranch. And I looked it up. 57 Ranch was a huge ranch. Well, not huge, but a good sized ranch back in the day in northeastern Oregon. And they had run about 300 cow-calf pairs. They had a haying operation. They had horses. And then I think there was a death in the family and things were dispersed. And so what we surmise, but don't know for sure, is that Hermiston always has a horse sale. And everyone goes to the auction, and likely these horses ended up going through that sale and being bought by the same family or the same guy. So, Cinco was his name at the time. Cloud's name was Cinco. He was quite thin. The kill pens are very stressful. Like I said, there's full exposure to any of the elements. There's no shelter. They're in the winter, they're cold, wet, mucky. It's filthy. And that's Sky right there, right after we got him out of quarantine. And he's quite thin. You can't quite tell how thin he is, but he's very thin in this picture.
And I'm sharing this on YouTube. So if you get a moment, you can watch later. You don't have to watch right now, but I am sharing a picture of Sky there in one of the pens. And yes, he is very emaciated and not in the form that he should be in if he'd been well cared for.
So we arranged, Barb just pulled Cloud on her own. She bought him. You just went and PayPal'd, and there's Cloud. After Barb had him, 8 or 9 months, he looks great.
And you can see the vast difference in this particular picture, and they're look-alike brothers. And he'd been through the same thing, and now look at him. He's robust, he's glossy, he's shiny, and he looks very alert.
Yes. And so she bought him, arranged to get him hauled out to quarantine, and then after a month usually of quarantine, and he was treated for strangles and dewormed, and his feet were trimmed and his mane and tail were detangled, and he was fed up. Then he was transported down to her, and he was evaluated under saddle because she was elderly, and she was able to ride him. And then because of health reasons, she ended up rehoming him to her dear friends, Irenia and Christine, in New Mexico. And they're wonderful people. They have rescue dogs and rescue horses. They have a beautiful place. And they love their horses and take excellent, excellent care of them. And they had taken a horse from her before. And so she knew for a fact that they would be a soft place for this horse to land. And so he went there. And we didn't think much more about it. And then a year later, early April, we see Sky pop up on the Facebook page, of showing the horses that are available for purchase from the kill pen. And
now, are you monitoring, pages like this from time to time? I mean, was this something that you did?
Obsessively. It became very stressful for me because, the kill buyer isn't messing around. When he says he's shipping them, and that's it. And so knowing that every week what days were shipping days, you just feel this pit of dread in your stomach, trying to do everything you could to pull the horses that you could to get them away from that, because it's a very cruel and stressful process. These horses are in with strange horses, stallions and mares. They're fighting. They're crammed into trucks. They're trucked to Salt Lake and rested and watered if they're lucky. And they're not offloaded. And they fight in these trailers. They fight in these trucks.
Oh,
and
I did not know they weren't offloaded.
Then they continue.
They are crammed into these hauling vehicles and not let out at all.
And then
that seems inhumane right there.
Moved on to Texas, where they are sorted by condition: light, medium, and heavy. And they each go to a different lot depending on that. And these are massive. It's a massive hub. And then they are trucked over the border to be processed in Mexico. And those animals, unfortunately, are terrified. It is exceedingly scary for them. They're not cattle. And I could say that commercial slaughter is basically frightening, probably for every animal that goes through it. However, horses have a long neck, and most abattoirs are designed for cattle. The horses sling their heads around, they rear, they pull back, they fight. They don't just go stand there placidly and wait for it. So the process is cruel from the beginning to the end, and terrifying for them. And even,
Marjorie, just help the audience understand what drives some of the demand for this.
Incredibly, it is for human consumption, usually in Europe and in Asia. Most of the Mexican processed horses go to Asia. Japan, they eat them like sushi. In fact, even, and no horse is immune to this. Ferdinand, it was probably the most famous horse to have been slaughtered for human consumption. He was a Kentucky Derby winner. He was sold as a stallion to breed mares in Japan. He went sterile. They used him in a riding club for a while, and then they slaughtered him. And the issue is that horse meat isn't good for you. Horses, now in Canada, Bouvier is the biggest exporter of horses and horse meat. They demand in Canada that horses have a passport showing that they are organic, so to speak, that they are free of any chemicals or drugs like bute, banamine. We treat horses with hormones, fly spray, dewormers, antibiotics, non-steroidal and steroidal anti-inflammatories, on and on. Every horse you ever meet is going to at some point be exposed to this. And bute, for example, which is a very common non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug that we give to horses when they get a boo-boo, a swollen leg, whatever. People who consume horse meat often develop, that has been treated with these drugs, develop aplastic anemia, cancer, and they die a horrible death.
It's really hard to even hear all of this. I mean, to do a show on this alone, it's difficult, because being a horsewoman all my life since I was age 2, growing up with these animals and having them as part of the family, And then to hear stories like this is just, it's gut wrenching. It's heart wrenching. It's hard for me personally to fathom. I'm sure our audience as well.
Right.
But
Because
this is what you have been, a world that you've been part of. This is Marjorie Dowell, by the way, who is a horse trainer, horse rescuer. She's talking to us from Tennessee near Nashville. And she used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I met her when I was looking for a horse at my life to be a trail horse and to be a companion. And I found a lovely one named Jax. He's a registered paint. He's now 18 years old, and he's been a lovely part of my family. And my name is Leigh Anne Lindsey, by the way, if you're just tuning in again or you're just watching on YouTube. And I'm also working on a documentary about Seabiscuit's legacy. So the horses are a big part of my life. They're not all of my life, but they're a big part. And this part of learning about kill pins, when I was actually looking for that horse and ran across some that a group was trying to save, and I joined them and I gave them financial support. That was about all I could do, but they arranged for the pickup, the transportation, all of that. And so there's a whole network, right, Marjorie, that is involved with helping to rescue these horses from kill pins. And there's a demand for them, like you were saying, because of
human consumption. Yeah.
Human consumption. Thank you. I was trying to think of the word to describe all of that. Plus, then there are others who are thinking that there's no way to save this horse. There's nothing to do but to maybe they're thinking it's humane to put them down and to do it that way. So there's a lot of reasons for kill pins, right?
Yes. People think that, well, there's a lot of people who think horses owe them something. Everyone has an expectation. When they have a horse, they want something out of it. They want to ride the horse. They want to show the horse or compete with the horse. The horse needs to breed. The horse needs to make money. The horse needs to do this or do that. Plow the field.
Most of the time I'm caring for him more than anything else. As far as my relationship with my horse, I'm giving him a ton of care and then riding every now and then. So a little different. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Joke about owning horses and riding horses are two different things. It's a lot of work. It's a lifestyle. And
Lifestyle, yes.
The cost of dealing with a horse who didn't work out for whatever reason or might need to be euthanized can be daunting, especially on the West Coast. It's not cheap to put a horse down, and usually that involves a vet. And it usually involves a rendering plant picking that horse up and hauling it off after we've put the horse down, because it's difficult most people aren't allowed to bury a horse on their property, especially if that horse has been euthanized, rather than, say, shot. So I don't want to be too dark here, but so there is these factions of people who feel like practically, slaughterhouses should be reopened in the United States and that it would be less cruel and less inhumane and could be more regulated. The facts just didn't support that. We had slaughter in this country. We fought real hard to stop it. And what we do know does work are hay banks, euthanasia clinics, gelding clinics, things of this nature do help people who need help feeding a horse, putting a horse down, gelding a horse. It would be nice if people would stop irresponsibly breeding. What's really tough is to see, bred mares and young horses at the kill pen. There's just no excuse for that.
Well, that happens in the dog and cat worlds too. Dog world, it's like puppy mills. But going back to the story for today that we're bringing everybody listening, it's about these two twin brothers that are Andalusian horses, and what happened with them that they end up in these kill pens, and then how they are rescued, and then the wonderful life that they have today based on the two people. And there are many of people like that here in this country, in this world, who would love to take on an animal and take care of them and give them everything that they need. And that's what the story is about, right, Marjorie?
Yes. So Sky, who was called Dalton originally, and then I dubbed him Quinto, and I actually rescued him myself personally because the rescue was overwhelmed at this point now with too many horses we were taking care of, and we just couldn't take another one. So it was early April of 2017 that we saw him, and I contacted the killer, and he just had the price listed. I just paid the price and arranged for him to be hauled to quarantine. I paid the gal to quarantine him. She was wonderful with him. She wasn't far from where he was. I had to arrange a transport for him. And then he was sick, so we had the vet come and we had his teeth done. We had him vaccinated. Well, no, we didn't vaccinate him right away. It's a mistake to vaccinate right away or worm right away. You don't want to stress them too much when they're thin. So refeeding was a thing. We of course attended his teeth, and then we put him on antibiotics because he was sick with strangles, which is equine distemper, which is a very common thing that they get in the auction yards and at the kill pens. Whenever you have a lot of horses from lots of different places, you're going to get, just like with people, you're going to get
right
bacteria and virus, and it just goes on from there. And once that stuff's in the soil, it lives forever and it doesn't go away. So he thrived with the care that we were giving him. And then out of the blue, unexpectedly, my mother passed away. And then 3 weeks later, my father passed away. And I just had him sitting in quarantine while I was dealing with family loss and all that entailed. And Barb and Irene and Christine were just angels. And they agreed to take him because we said clearly they both have the same brand. When you show them side by side, they look almost identical. I say that Sky is a bit taller and maybe not as chunky as Cloud. And we have really no history or age on them. We don't know their parents. But it's clear that they look alike and that they bear the same brand on their hip. They came in the same trailer. They came from the same guy a year apart. And they didn't go through the auction. He just brought them straight to the killer because this one didn't dance either. So, we arranged then to have him hauled to New Mexico to be reunited with Cloud. The hauler, so there's a whole faction of people who haul these horses because they're considered dirty because they've been exposed at the kill pens. So your commercial transport haulers usually will not haul a rescue horse at all because of the disease factor, because then they have to disinfect their whole trailer every time they unload, and they can't bring on horses from a clean barn into a dirty trailer. So
let's back up just a moment too. You said that the horse wouldn't dance.
Yes.
So I have some questions about what does that mean?
So in several cultures around the world, there is a kind of a form of, I think they are inspired from classical dressage, and they want the horse to piaffe and passage and Spanish walk. They want it to dance in place to music.
Oh, so the lifting the legs real big and
yes, and very fiery and just ready to jump out of their skin, breathing hard, and they love to have lots of hair, lots of mane. Yes, it's all about show, and it's just a faction of and there are some dancing trainers who are good horsemen, and then there are some who are abusive, and the way that they attain that method of making the horse dance can be cruel. It can be quite cruel.
I've heard some of that recently too. So that's how Sky and Cloud end up in the same kill pen a year apart, because they had been with these owners who had wanted to show them and then had become dissatisfied with their performance.
Yes, because these were a couple of ranch horses. Clearly, they were not. They were not a fiery stallion that's going to come roaring out of the barn and piaffe and passage and Spanish walk and put on a show. So they were both thin, and I think maybe there was a financial issue at hand.
Oh, and I did want to let everybody know I am planning to take a lot of the photographs and videos that Marjorie has collected over time of all these horses, and we'll showcase them on a page of Sea Storm Studios, which is my business. And it's a production business for film and voice, and we'll be creating a podcast out of this as well. But I'll share some on social media. You can find me under Leigh Anne Lindsey on Instagram, and that's Leigh for Lee, Anne with an E and Lindsay with an EY. But I will share some on Facebook as well. So I think and on the website on Sea Storm Studios, I'll do that too, because I want to show people, what you are talking about when you see it visually, when you see what's happened to these horses and then how they can look after. It's an amazing transformation. Amazing.
Absolutely. These horses bounced back, and when Dalton Quinto, now Sky, arrived at his new home in New Mexico, he got off the trailer and those two geldings locked eyes, and it was very clear he practically dragged the fella to him, and they were two peas in a pod, fast friends. There's no question that these horses knew each other, had lived together, and belonged together.
I could just see this playing out on the big screen.
It's a miracle when you consider the odds that two horses were bought and taken to a kill pen a year apart, and that two people, Barb and me, noticed them a year apart and had the means to get them out. And then there's a village of people involved, from the transport person, because it's not a dime a dozen of those, to the quarantine facility, to the vet, the farrier, the hauler, to take them down there, and then eventually to have Christine and Irene, who are wonderful people, be willing and have the means to take on yet another horse, because you don't want to be horse poor. My limit is 5, and that is a full-time job. And really, 3 would be better, or 2, but I have 5, and almost all of them are rescue horses. So I have 5 stalls. They're full. There will not be any more until somebody goes. That's it. But that they were willing and able to reunite these two horses, and they ride them. They love them. They have the best life. They are the kindest, most gentle, loving, wonderful souls, these two horses. And I could see it in their eye. I could see it in their eyes. And they just needed someone to care again about them. And it's clear they aren't that way by accident, that they were raised by someone who was kind. And one time they were valued, they were loved, and they mattered. And they do matter. And everyone deserves a chance. No horse or any animal deserves to be starved, abused, neglected, or subjected to cruelty and stress. So that is the miracle of these two horses. It really is. It's just, when I think about it, and I'm an experienced horse person, I've been doing this a long, long time. Just the odds of finding two horses from the same ranch together and being able to reunite them, because I was prepared to keep him and bring him to Gilroy, and he probably would be in Tennessee right now had they not intervened. But thank God, the opportunity to put those two horses back together was the right thing for those horses. That's the facts.
Now, what would you recommend for people who are listening that may want to get involved somehow and help horses that might end up in kill pens? What would you recommend that they do?
Research the rescues you're going to assist very carefully, because there are scammers out there as well. So you have to be careful about the rescue effort, who you support, that they are actually vetting these horses and quarantining, and that they are training them and they are doing the right things to rehome them. It is also another seedy side of the business where we have some rescues who take advantage of well-meaning, kind-hearted people. So I always say, seek out a local rescue near you. If you are interested in helping a horse rescue, volunteer, get involved, boots on the ground, get to know the people, get to know the facility, get to know the horses. And
yes, as a matter of fact, I'll tell our listeners that there is a great rescue organization in Willits that Ronnie McFadden is part of. And if you'd like to get in touch with her, please message me. I'll make sure to get you connected. I can't remember the name of that rescue organization at the moment, but the other one that I know of is down in Sebastopol, and it's the Safer Rescue. There's one in Petaluma. They're really all over, and it's really just, you can go online and research them.
yes.
and discover where
Yes.
these are in your local area. So for our listeners in the Mendocino and Sonoma counties of Northern California, there are plenty of sources that are local.
And
So that's a very good suggestion.
there's also a rescue in Egypt that I support in Cairo called
Really?
Prince Fluffy Kareem, and they take in the most horrific neglect and abuse, that because Cairo it's a third world country, it's just grinding poverty, and they bring in horses and donkeys, they bring in camels, goats, dogs, spare children. They find these animals just standing in the dump or on the side of the road, or people bring them in, and their mission there is twofold: to foster and keep horses that need to be retired and save them, or the part of rescue also is euthanasia. Some horses cannot be rehabilitated for various reasons, and they need a kind end, and so they do that. And
Could you say the name of it again?
Prince Fluffy Kareem.
Prince
Fluffy Kareem. I know it's a funny name, but they are it's named for, I think, the first horse they rescued. These are often horses that are tourist horses from the pyramids in Cairo, in Egypt, and it is run by a British lady. It's a UK organization. So, I fundraise for it on my birthday every year, and I donate to them regularly. And I do enough domestically on my own as well. So there's certainly there's breed organizations too. If you're interested in a breed of horse, like the Iberian Horse Rescue or the Arabian Horse Rescue and Education, or Love This Horse, there's the Foundation for the Pure Spanish Horse, there's quarter horse rescues. There's a rescue for everything, every breed of horse you can imagine.
Even when I was rescuing dogs, I was particularly interested in the Borzoi, or the Russian wolfhound.
Yeah.
So Russian wolfhound is known as Borzoi, and there is one for Northern California called the Northern California Borzoi Rescue Organization. So every cats, dogs have their own specific individual organizations too, just like you're saying, for quarter horses, for Arabians, for thoroughbreds, for race horses.
Absolutely.
And if you have the means and the ability and the wherewithal, and or can bring people in with the knowledge to help you with a horse rescue, it is a wonderful thing to do for these noble animals.
Yes, there's even a foal rescue in Ohio, 6 hours away from me, called the Last Chance Corral, where they rescue the foals that are born to the nurse mares for the race horses. That their mares are bred just specifically to nurse a thoroughbred foal, and their foal is taken away from them immediately. And this Last Chance Corral.
So this is a new one on me. I didn't even know about this one.
It's, and about the PMU horses, I'm sure, up in Canada, the pregnant mare urine to make Premarin. Oh, so that's another whole story.
We'll have to get in that another time. But today it was, this is a series, a 3-part series called Rescue Me. And we started out with Baron's Journey. You can watch it on YouTube, on KGUA's YouTube channel. This one today is about cloudy skies that actually turn sunny when both cloud and sky are placed with their new home in New Mexico. And we have been talking about the unfortunate situation of kill pens that exist. I didn't even know that there were some in Washington State. I knew of the ones in Texas. Now, there's a controversy over this, and we're talking about this, and we'll talk more about these things next week. And Marjorie, I think next week we should really go into talking about the care and the attention and what goes into, especially with starting with both Cloud and Sky and Baron, what the steps are to bring them back to health.
Yeah.
And then how they're cared for in their last years of their life.
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. And
How could people, if they want to get in touch with you right now, since we've just got a few more minutes to the show today, and we still have one more to come next week in this Rescue Me series that I'm doing. And my name is Leigh Anne Lindsey. I've been the host today. And Marjorie, this is Marjorie Dowell, horse trainer, horse rescue. How could they get in touch with you?
I can be emailed directly, MJ_Dowell, D as in David, OWELL @yahoo.com.
So MJ as in Mary Jane.
_Dowell @yahoo.com. I have a Facebook page called Miss Taven. You can directly message me there. And I believe my phone number is on that page as well, if someone wants to text or call.
Miss Taven.
Miss Taven, that's the
Where did
name.
that come from?
Miss Taven is the name of my stable. Miss Taven actually, I think, was a town in the Lord of the Rings, but I named it for the marine layer that blew from the ocean over the Santa Cruz Mountains across our place. And I'll tell you, it's similar here. We have mist that rolls through the hollers here, and I've just decided to keep that name because I love the name. And several of my horses are named. I named my animals of the place they were born. So Leigh Anne of Miss Taven and Gabriel of Miss Taven. I have 5 dogs that were born of Miss Taven. So
I love that.
Yeah. So, and that started from the first mare that I ever rescued, named Rosemary of Arn. And she was, because of her name, I was able to research her and find out an amazing amount of information and what an incredible horse she had been. So, I tell people that the value of these horses. I just had a conversation this last week with a person who said, well, that horse isn't earning his keep. Do you enjoy the horse? Yes. He's my friend. Then he's earning his keep. Does the horse make you a better person? Absolutely. He's earning his keep. Horses don't owe you anything. They make us better people. That is really the truth of it all. They are a mirror of us. And the saying, show me your horse and I'll tell you who you are, is very true. You can look at horses and the way they are cared for and the way they are ridden or treated by people, and that tells you a lot about that individual. So,
well, on that note, we're going to say thank you, Marjorie, for joining us today. We really appreciate hearing these things, and you have a wealth of knowledge on these topics and a lot more too. I mean, this is just a small facet. The name of the town that you live in, say that again one more time.
Pleasant Shade.
Pleasant Shade, Tennessee. I love it.
I just thought, oh, sounds so lovely. It is lovely. I love it here. It's great.
You have a beautiful place there, and you're taking such great care of your 5 horses there. Thanks so much for joining us today on KGUA.
Thank you, Leigh Anne.
All right. I'll see you next week. Bye. And to everybody on our YouTube channel, thank you for watching. For everybody out there in the radio audience at 88.3 FM, thank you for joining in today. I'm Leigh Anne Lindsey, and this is KGUA in Wallala, 88.3 FM.